The clippers buzzed once, then silence. Then again, that violent, bone-close electric hum cutting through the air like it was wired into pain itself. Jason Statham stood at the doorway of the locker room, his jaw locked, his eyes unblinking. The razor was already off. The hair was already on the ground, and his daughter sat there, still, small, humiliated in the middle of a circle of laughter that wasn't hers. She wasn't crying. She was breathing hard, eyes burning holes into the tiled floor, trying not to fall apart. Jason didn't move, didn't shout. He just looked. The coach, a bulky ex-athlete with a gut full of cheap power, held the clippers in one hand like a trophy. Still grinning. Still basking in the applause of the other players who couldn't tell if it was a prank or something worse. None of them noticed the silence behind them had changed, not until Jason stepped forward. But this isn't where it began, not really, because what happened in that locker room wasn't random. It was years in the making, years of quiet discipline. Years of a little girl being raised by a father who only taught one rule: never let anyone take your dignity. And yet now, her dignity lay in clumps on the floor, long strands of dark hair glinting under cheap fluorescent lights. It had started 3 days earlier. A tournament, an away game. A new town, new field, new rules. Jason had been working a broad security contract, high level, the kind that didn't let you keep your phone on. But his daughter Nia had told him not to worry. She said she'd be fine, that she had it, and he believed her. Because she was built from him, steel, silence, and a core of fire. Nia had joined the team late in the season. She wasn't flashy, wasn't loud, but she was good, precise, disciplined. The kind of athlete who played like it meant something deeper. That's what the coach didn't like. He didn't like control he couldn't break. The other girls, they laughed at his jokes, played along when he mocked them, called them names, made them run until their legs trembled. But Nia, she was quiet, sharp-eyed, unimpressed, so he called her too serious. Said she needed to loosen up. Said all that discipline was just hiding something. And when she didn't respond, didn't react, that's when the resentment turned cruel. At first it was subtle, benching her with no explanation, having her run laps for imaginary violations, making her share a hotel room with no bathroom privacy. But none of that cracked her. Then came the bus ride. Jason had just gotten off the plane, jet-lagged, hungry. Voice mailbox full. He checked one message. It was from one of Nia's teammates, whispered, scared. She didn't give details. Just said he needed to come. Now, Jason didn't wait. He didn't call ahead. He got into a car and drove through the night across 3 counties without stopping. By the time he pulled into the school parking lot, the tournament had ended. The team had lost. And the players were filing into the gym to shower and change. Jason parked, walked calmly toward the building. No one stopped him. No one dared. He followed the sound of laughter. That hollow, awful kind that only comes when everyone in the room forgets what a human heart is supposed to feel like. And then he saw it, the circle, the clippers, the floor, and Nia, his daughter, staring at her own bare reflection in a locker mirror. That's where we began. That's where we are. And Jason's hand had just curled into a fist, but not to swing, not yet, because revenge isn't about rage. It's about weight, about timing, about letting silence wrap around the guilty long enough to feel it squeeze. Jason stepped fully into the room. The coach finally noticed. He froze, clippers still in hand. Just a joke, he started to say. Jason looked at Nia. She stood now, straight spine, tears unshed, but her lip quivered, and that was enough. Jason's voice didn't rise, but his presence did. The laughter stopped. The room shrank, and in that shrinking the truth became unbearable. Jason didn't ask questions, didn't make threats. He walked to the locker where Nia's bag sat. He took out her hoodie, gently, like it was glass, placed it around her shoulders, and whispered something into her ear. Not words, just presence, just anchor. Then he turned and stared at the coach and smiled, not a grin, a promise, the kind of smile that says, "You just bought your own ending." Then Jason left, not because it was over, but because now it was starting. He didn't speak to the school, didn't demand meetings. He did one thing. He found out where the coach would be tomorrow morning, because men like that always do the same thing, they show off, and Jason would be waiting. The whistle blew sharp at 6:03 a.m. Coach Riggins didn't notice the man watching from the far fence line. He was too busy barking at teenage girls to hustle, jog, stretch, move. The same routine, same swagger, same fake authority wrapped in a tracksuit with a school logo stitched above a belly that hadn't seen exercise in years. But the man at the fence, he didn't blink once. Jason Statham had been there since 5:15 a.m. He hadn't come to make noise, he came to listen, and what he heard told him everything, because punishment, when disguised as coaching, has a rhythm, a tone. And Coach Riggins' tone had a sickness under it, the kind of poison that slips into a kid's blood through jokes, nicknames, commands. By 6:30, Jason had seen enough. He walked away before the session ended, because it wasn't time for confrontation, not yet. Justice wasn't just about hitting back. It was about making sure the hit meant something. And Jason didn't want Riggins just afraid. He wanted him exposed. Jason's next stop wasn't the school board or the principal's office. It was a local coffee shop 3 blocks down, where 3 members of the coaching staff gathered most mornings after practice. Jason sat at the bar, didn't order, just listened. And what he heard was silence when Riggins' name came up, the kind that means complicity. The kind that means they'd all heard the stories. Jason stood, walked to their table and placed an envelope in the center, inside. Stills from locker room security footage. They didn't know how he got it, didn't ask. He leaned forward just enough for them to feel the gravity. Told them they had 48 hours, not to speak, but to act. Then he left. The first crack was in motion. Later that day, Jason visited the janitor's closet, not for supplies, but because the old man inside, Henry, had worked at the school for 22 years and had seen every ugly corner. Jason didn't knock, he just leaned on the doorframe and waited. Henry looked up, didn't flinch, just said, "Been waiting on you." Jason nodded. Henry handed him a box. Inside, evidence, old complaints, anonymous reports. One letter from a former player, unsigned, describing being told to take one for the team or risk being benched forever. Jason closed the box. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was cleansing. By nightfall, 3 parents had gotten anonymous texts, their daughters mentioned, the coach's conduct outlined, timelines included. Jason knew not all parents would care, but one did, a mother whose daughter quit 2 seasons ago, who had screamed at her for walking away. Now she knew why. Jason sent her the locker room footage, too, no watermark, no caption, just the truth. And truth doesn't need explaining when it bleeds that loud. By the following morning, murmurs were spreading. One girl refused to run laps, another skipped practice, and Riggins. He tried to pull the team together, double down, shout louder, enforce drills harder. But you can't coach control once it starts slipping. And the silence in the locker room now, it wasn't fear anymore, it was watching. That night, Jason stood outside Riggins' house, didn't knock, didn't move, just stood in the dark across the street until the lights in the window turned off. Then he walked away, not because Riggins had seen him, but because knowing someone might be watching is more powerful than seeing them there. Inside the house, Riggins checked his locks twice that night, then 3 times. The day after, Jason walked into the school's administrative office unannounced. The receptionist didn't stop him. The secretary didn't ask. He placed the box from Henry on the principal's desk. The principal, a man who had built a career on handshakes and blind eyes, started to speak. Jason raised one hand. No threats, no demands, just one sentence: do your job before someone else does. Then he turned and walked out. The principal opened the box. 30 minutes later, 2 staff members were pulled into a closed-door meeting. By end of day, the school board had convened an emergency session. Riggins didn't know it yet, but the hill he stood on had already started to crumble, and that night it got steeper. Because Jason made one final stop, the town's amateur radio station, run by an old friend from his younger days. They didn't need to catch up, didn't need to explain why Jason was there. The man asked one question: "You want it broadcasted or buried?" Jason said, "Truth always finds its own volume." The next morning, a pre-recorded segment aired, a voice reading excerpts from the letter in Henry's box. No names, no direct accusations, but anyone listening close knew exactly who it was about. Jason sat in his truck at the edge of the football field and listened, and when the final words hit the air, "What kind of man teaches girls that silence is strength?" He turned the engine off and waited, because now it was Riggins' turn to sweat. By sundown, 3 girls had walked off the team. 2 more had scheduled meetings with the school counselor. 1 coach had submitted a resignation, and Riggins, he stood in the middle of the field, whistle in hand, yelling into a space that no longer respected him. Jason Statham never stepped on the field. He didn't need to, because real justice doesn't chase the guilty. It builds a mirror so sharp they cut themselves trying to look away, and Riggins was bleeding by reflection now. But Jason wasn't finished, because the final lesson wasn't for Riggins. It was for Nia, and that moment was coming. The school gym was empty, not silent. The echo of bouncing basketballs from the younger class next door gave it a heartbeat, but the court Jason Statham stepped onto felt like a sealed arena, not for sport, for truth. He moved with deliberate calm, not in a hurry, not dragging his steps. His jacket folded neatly over one arm, eyes sharp, jaw locked. The kind of walk that said this wasn't about proving anything, it was about finishing something. Across the court stood Coach Riggins, alone, no players, no assistant coaches, no clipboard in hand, just sweat, confusion, and fear he hadn't worn before. Jason didn't speak, didn't shout. He simply walked across the gym step by step until the distance between them was close enough to choke the air. Coach Riggins opened his mouth. Jason raised a hand just slightly. The coach stopped. Jason pulled a phone from his pocket, tapped play. From the speaker came Riggins' own voice, barely a week old, laughing about how shaving Nia toughened her up, and how sometimes you gotta break a girl to build a team. He turned pale. The gym stayed still. Jason didn't threaten, he didn't move closer. He just let the silence do the suffocating. Then, without a word, he handed over a thin envelope. Inside, legal documents, the kind that don't just fire a man, they strip him, of pension, of coaching certifications, of the quiet shelter of reputation he'd built like armor. Coach Riggins didn't touch the envelope, didn't look Jason in the eye, just whispered, "You think you're saving her?" Jason didn't respond, because this wasn't about saving, this was about restoring, and that moment hadn't come yet. He turned and walked away. Outside the gym, Nia waited. Hair still short, chin still raised. She didn't know what was inside the envelope, didn't ask. Jason looked at her but didn't say anything. Instead, he handed her a folded paper. She opened it. A newspaper clipping. A story about her. A retraction published that morning by the local press, originally titled "Team Discipline Questioned," now corrected to "Teen Stands Tall Against Toxic Coaching." She blinked fast, but didn't cry. She didn't need to. Jason nodded once, then turned away. But she caught his sleeve. He stopped. She didn't speak either, just held on for a second longer than she needed to, then let go. Jason didn't ask where she was going next, didn't tell her what to do, because this was hers now, the dignity, the voice, the walk forward. Jason's job had never been to protect her from the world. It was to make sure the world knew what it cost to try and crush her, and they knew now. Word spread fast, faster than the incident, because justice spreads differently than gossip. It carries weight. And by evening, the school board had issued a statement. Riggins had resigned, effective immediately. The players were given a week off from practice, and Nia, she went back, head high, no hoodie, no apology. She didn't smile, didn't need to. The message was in her presence. A few teammates looked away, but most didn't. Some nodded. Others sat beside her at lunch for the first time. And when she walked back into the gym days later, wearing her old jersey with no number by choice, she didn't warm up, didn't stretch. She stood in the middle of the court and waited until a ball rolled toward her. She caught it, tossed it back without looking. No coach gave her orders. No one told her how to carry herself, because they had learned. This wasn't just Jason Statham's daughter. This was someone they should have never underestimated. Meanwhile, Jason didn't linger. He walked the perimeter of the school one last time, stopped by the chain-link fence that edged the field. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. Another case, another name, this one a facility, kids disappearing. An authority figure with a badge and a secret. But that wasn't today's mission. Today was Nia's. Jason turned, stepped into his truck and drove, not to chase justice, but to deliver it again somewhere else. Because in a world where no one watches the watchers, Jason Statham does. And when they think it's over, that's when he begins, quiet, precise, and absolute.